All right, we're ready to go.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so what you're looking at here is an image of Abraham Maslow. Maslow was the founder of humanistic psychology, and most people don't know as much about humanistic psychology as they do as positive psychology. You probably have heard more about positive psychology, but humanistic psychology is about 50 years older than positive psychology. And what happened was initially there were only two choices for in psychology. You could either follow the Freudian school of thought, which was everything humans did could be reduced to sexual aggressive urges, or behaviorism, which focused on stimulus response or conditioned learning. And so what the humanistic psychologists wanted to do is bring the humanity to psychology. They wanted to show that humans could have higher potentialities. And so Maslow was the originator. And he postulated that humans have different levels of needs that need to be met in order to have the opportunity to become all they are capable of becoming. So you probably have seen this pyramid in some shape or form. So at the physiological needs are something that we all need. So we all need food. I'm trying to get my slideshow to work here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So if we look at the physiological needs, we all have the need for food, shelter, water. We all have safety needs. We have the need to live in environments that are free of discrimination, free of violence, from discord in the family. And then we also have the need for love and belonging. And this is where we're going to double click on today. And we're going to spend the entire workshop just focusing on this one. I think it's a good time to have a discussion about this, considering that as a species, we are becoming increasingly more lonely. And so we're going to really dive into that today. And the next one we have is the esteem, which we all need self-esteem. And we also need this esteem from others. And if you take all of these together, then we're able to focus on self-actualization, which is the desire to become the most that one can be. It's not about achievement. It's about filling your purpose in your life. Okay. And you guys have probably seen this also on the internet, but you know, the most pressing need of modern day is Wi-Fi, or even more recently, toilet paper. Okay. I also want to introduce you guys to Scott Barry Kaufman. I'm going to refer to him as SBK throughout this workshop. He goes by SBK. I just finished a course with him, an 8-week course, and he has been studying intelligence and creativity for the last 20 years. He's a leading researcher in that area. And he actually spent about 5 years diving really deep into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He read all of the published and unpublished writings. He interviewed everybody that knew him. And he found that the pyramid, well, let me back up a second. A little bit of a twist that he discovered was that Maslow never intended his theory to be depicted in a pyramid. Because it kind of insinuates like it's a step-by-step process, which is not what it's meant to be. His theory was meant to be integrated. And so what SBK did was he backed all of Maslow's original theory in science. So at the end, I'll also share with you all the resources that I'm using throughout this webinar. And you know, he found that the metaphor of a sailboat was more appropriate for the hierarchy of needs. And so he modernized it. And I love this metaphor because it is, you know, life is an experience. We have setbacks, we get up, we choose the growth option again and again. And so the sea can be choppy and it can be stormy, and it can also be wonderful and sunny and, you know, a great experience. So a lot of what I cover with you today is the latest and greatest in the psychological literature up to now. So based on that, you're going to see a lot of references in here from SBK. And so let's start with a definition. So the need for connection is to form and maintain at least a minimal number of positive, stable, intimate relationships is a fundamental, irreducible, and undeniable human need. So again, just like food, water, safety, the need for connection is also just a basic human need. So within the literature, the need for connection has two distinct sub-needs, and it's very important to distinguish the two, and you'll see why. So in one group, there's a need to belong. There's a sense of acceptance, inclusion, and being liked. And then the need for intimacy is the other group. And this is a sense of mutuality and relatedness. So it's important to distinguish these two because oftentimes we are not fulfilled in our need for intimacy, and we're trying to get it through the need to belong. So as we talk about the first sub-need, which is the need to belong, we need to talk about the underlying mechanism that drives the need to belong, which is the social protective system. The social protective system is a deeply evolved system with clear survival and reproductive function. So the brain is a social organ, okay? We have always band together to survive. And the limbic area of the brain that I have highlighted here is crucial for how we form relationships and how we attach to one another. If you're familiar, if you've ever raised or you've been around, frogs or, lizards, snakes, they don't attach to each other, and they don't surely don't attach to us. If you're raising a fish, or if you have a fish at home, that fish is not attached to you. Okay, they don't have this limbic area. So as our first activity here, I'd like you to type into the chat, what types of animals would you expect to become attached to one another, or even humans? So go ahead and list in the chat, and Dr. Gerkin will read them, and we'll hear some of your examples.
First one I saw was otters. And I'm
Otters.
seeing lots of dogs. I'm seeing seals,
Yes,
cat or dogs,
good.
wolves, whales.
Whales, that's a great one. That's going to bring me right into my next slide. Yes,
Or dogs,
mammals.
whale.
All mammals have limbic area in the brain. So attachment is just what we do. We attach to one another. And if you have animals, your dog, your cat, they get attached to you, and we get attached to them. And I like that someone brought up the whale, because I was going to give you guys a fun fact. Orcas experience, well, scientists hypothesize that they experience a deeper connection than humans do. That's because they have an extra lobe of tissue immediately next to the limbic system in their brain. And so they have a greater level of attachment, and they feel deeper. They have more, they feel deeper love and grief. So that creates an ethical dilemma when they are removed from their families and their tribes and are essentially enslaved. So as I mentioned, let's go back there. The social protective system is a really deeply evolved system, and it protects us from being excluded. And belonging is contextual. So what you'll find is in societies where times are relatively safe, and we're doing pretty well, there tends to be less tribalism. And there tends to be more coming together. But when there's circumstances where the social protective system is being activated or triggered among lots of people, you will see people cling much closer to their tribe and much closer towards people who accept them. Even if it's not intimacy, we're going to get to intimacy. These people accept them for aspects of who they are, not for holistically who they are. So I love this quote, BK, our tribal instincts run deep. And especially now, we're on the eve of the election. And so particular ideology that you share with a particular group, we're gonna, we're gonna feel that we belong to that group. So take a moment, and I'm just gonna have you assess where you are on the need to belong scale. I have at the bottom from 1 to 5, strongly disagree to moderately disagree, and so on. I'm going to read these off, and I just want you to reflect on where are you with the sub-need to belong. So if other people don't seem to accept me, I don't let it bother me. So get a sense for the people in your life, okay? Maybe it's your classmates, maybe it's a athletic group or a band or something that you're involved in, or maybe a colleague or your family, friends. I try hard not to do things that will make other people avoid or reject me. I seldom worry about whether other people care about me. I want others to accept me. I need to feel there are people I can turn to in times of need. I have a strong need to belong. It bothers me a great deal when I'm not included in other people's plans. And my feelings are easily hurt when I feel that others do not accept me. Okay, so just kind of get a sense for, we're developing some self-awareness about where you are in that particular need to belong. Okay, we're going to move on. And now we're going to talk about the need for intimacy. The need for belonging is quite different than the need for intimacy. While the need for belonging has the underlying system, the social protective system, the system that underlies the need for intimacy is really about the goal of connecting to people that you care about. So wanting to support the growth and happiness and development of other people. We meet this need through high quality connections. And so this is a term that they use in positive psychology. So high quality connections, I love this definition by Jane Dutton. And she defines it as a dynamic living tissue, and that's just so, I don't know, powerful, that exists between two people when there's some contact between them involving mutual awareness and social interaction. Like a healthy blood vessel that connects part of our body between two people and allows the transfer of nutrients. It is flexible, strong, and resilient. So relationships are so powerful. It's like our vitamins. And I love the comparison to a healthy blood vessel between two people. How is that blood vessel between you and that other person? Is it clear? Is it clean? Or is it clogged? But it's that important. It's a life source for us as humans. Okay? We're designed to connect to each other for survival. And they are so powerful. Just for a second, as a thought experiment, think about it. Okay, so our relationships bring the greatest amount of pain. Okay, don't think about the most painful experience in this moment, but they do. They bring, if you were experiencing sadness or fear or jealousy, there's somebody else in that equation, right? And also, we experience the greatest amount of joy in our lives because of a relationship. We love to laugh and we have amusement and we feel grateful for people in our lives. And we can share good news with others. So there is a mutuality and relatedness and the need for intimacy. There's both parties feel a sense of being alive. Like I said, there's mutuality, there's air buoyancy, there's not coercion, there's not controlledness, there's authenticity, psychological safety, and there's opportunities for self-disclosure. And it's very important to distinguish the need for belonging from intimacy, because the need for belonging does not have mutuality to it. You can belong to a particular group, like a political organization, a meetup group, a religious group, and don't feel a sense of intimacy or mutuality. It's not like your whole self is being accepted in this high quality way. you are only being accepted by the group because of a small, narrow aspect of who you are, not your whole self. So like you can join lots of groups where you feel accepted and belong, but the moment you dissent and the moment you start to question and say, wait, oh no, there may be some nuance here, then you get shunned from the whole group. That's not intimacy. There are no substitutes for the need for intimacy. Okay, we cannot get our need for intimacy through belonging. I really love this quote also by Nir Eyal. It says, most distraction doesn't originate from outside of us. It's not just the pings, dings, and rings. Most distraction starts from within. So are we trying to get our need for intimacy met through belonging? And it's not met by how large your social networks are, your popularity, or the number of people you know. It's more likely to be met through those high quality connections with at least a few people in our lives. 400 people on social media versus 2 or 4 meaningful ones, you're going to get your need for connection met. So we got to develop awareness of that. What's happening to us, and why do we? What's the distraction? Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to let you know that when you ask people to think about the ratings on that scale, that several people rated themselves on the chat. Several people put 4s, a few people put 5s, and one person put a 0. Just so you're aware of that some of them did rate themselves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. Okay, so I think that this table on the biology of loneliness, this is by Cacioppo, best illustrates the summary of what we've covered so far. And it's plain and simple. We have the key needs, right, to survive. So we need food. And so that is a physiological need that we have. And our brain sends an aversive signal, hunger, to eat and to meet that need. Same thing with water. That's a key need. There's an aversive signal, thirst, and then we go and get the drink, right? We are responsible for going to get the food, for going to get the drink. And then
okay, well, speaking of that, I'm going to go get a snack right now, if you don't mind.
Will you bring me one?
Okay.
And some water, some more coffee? Okay.
Right, coming right up.
Wonderful, thank you. I feel really connected to you right now. Okay. So another need that we have is to prevent or overcome physical injury. Okay, so this is what Cacioppo has in his model. I added emotional injury because it's the same. We have a pain signal. You know, if I feel a pain in my stomach, I'm gonna want to avoid that injury by seeking out help in some way, maybe scheduling an appointment to see a doctor. And same thing with emotional injury, because we have emotional injury in our relationships. Remember, it's a living blood vessel between each other, and we'll get the aversive signal of pain, and then in order to avoid doing that again, whatever happened in that relationship. And then finally, we have the key need to connect, to act together as a species, just like food and water. And nature gives us the pain of loneliness. And then the intended response is connection. And just like when we feel hungry or thirst, we get up and we go and feed ourselves or get ourselves something to drink. Same thing, when we feel that pain of loneliness, we need to go and get the connection. That's on us. We feel that pain to go, and that signal that we need to go and connect, and which we're going through right now in the pandemic. So this is going to be an opportunity for us to start thinking about your own relationships in your life. And now that we've developed an awareness of, what the connection or the need of connection is, and why we have it, and the 2 sub-needs, how do we create the kind of connection and meaning that we want in our lives? And so what I'd like you to do is I want you to write down, I want you to choose a relationship in your personal or professional life in which your interactions with another person are less than ideal. I don't want to send anyone into an emotional crisis. So don't, like, on a scale from 1 to 10, don't pick a 10 of a relationship. Pick someone who's like, you know, a 4 or 5, that there may be some conflict that's not resolved, and write that person down. And when you write that person down, I want you to describe and reflect on the current state of this relationship.
Yeah, is this something you want them to do on paper or on the chat?
No, I want them to write on a paper for themselves, just so they can keep it in mind as we go through this and develop some awareness about their own relationships. Thank you for clarifying that. And then finally, I want you to, I wrote some examples down here in the literature of positive interactions that people who have high quality relationships, what they look like. So they tend to have respectful engagement, they have presence, they support one another's goals or tasks, they have trust, there's playfulness, they have effective communication, they listen, and they have fun, which is my favorite. My favorite is being playful and fun. Those are my 2 favorite things to have in relationships. And so evaluate this relationship based on some of the examples that I gave you. What about this connection makes it subpar? Go ahead and just take, we'll give you 60 seconds. And then let's hear some examples. So go ahead and write in the chat. What are you guys writing? What's missing from that connection, do you think? We're just doing a, develop some insight and see where you are right now. David, is there anything in the chat?
Yes, I'm seeing listening, trust, effective communication, presence, a lot of trust. Trust is several times.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, let's keep those in mind.
A lot of effective communication as well.
Okay, awesome. So we're gonna look at those coming up soon. I'm going to show you a video. It's about 5 minutes long. I think it's an excellent video. And as you're watching this video, I want you to write down physically on your notes, how can you relate? What stands out for you? Okay, what insight are you developing? And before we jump into that, this quote by Oren J. Sofer is, he says, entering into relationships from a sense of deprivation versus a place of growth. So when we're in our relationship, that person that you thought about, are we coming from a place of deficiency, thinking about hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I don't have enough of this and I need this, okay? If we're deficient, or are we coming from a place of growth, of, you know, of self-actualization? How can I grow in this relationship? Okay, so I'm gonna play that.
There is a kind of argument that begins with one partner deliberately, and for no immediately obvious reason, attempting to spoil the good mood and high spirits of the other. The cheerful partner may be cooking a cake for their visiting nephew, or whistling a tune while they rearrange the kitchen. They may be making plans for the weekend, or discussing what fun it will be to see an old school friend again soon. Or they may be expressing unusual optimism about their professional future and financial prospects. Despite our love for them, something about the situation may suddenly grate with us. Within a short time, we may find ourselves saying something unusually harsh or critical. We may point out a flaw with their school friend. They tell very boring anecdotes and they can be pretty snobbish. We may take exception to the arrangement of the cupboards. We find fault with that cake. We bring up an aspect of their work that we know our partner finds dispiriting. We complain that they haven't properly considered the roadworks when planning the weekend. We do everything to try to induce a mood of anxiety, friction, and misery. On the surface, it looks as if we're simply monsters. But if we dig a little deeper, a more understandable, though no less regrettable picture may emerge. We are acting in this way because our partner's buoyant and breezy mood can come across as a forbidding barrier to communication. We fear that their current happiness could prevent them from knowing the shame or melancholy, worry or loneliness that presently possess us. We are trying to shatter their spirits because we're afraid of being lonely. We don't make this argument explicitly to ourselves, but a dark instinct in our minds experiences their upbeat mood as a warning that the uncheery parts of ourselves must now be unwelcome. And so we make a crude, wholly immature, but psychologically comprehensible assumption that we will never be properly known and loved until our partner can feel as sad and as frustrated as we do, a recalibration of mood that we put into motion with malicious determination. But, of course, the truth is quite the contrary. We may succeed in making our partner upset, but we almost certainly won't thereby secure the imagined benefits of their gloom. They won't, once their mood has been spoilt, emerge with any greater appetite for listening to our messages of distress or for cradling us indulgently in their consoling arms. They'll just be furious. The better move, if only we could manage it, would be to confess to, rather than act out, our impulses. We would learn to get to know the mechanisms of our immaturity with unfrightened curiosity, while making every effort to protect others from its effects. We would admit to our partner that we had been seized by an ugly fear as to the consequences of their happiness. We'd laughingly reveal how much we would ideally love to cause a stink, and would then firmly pledge that we naturally aren't about to. We would all the while remind ourselves that every cheerful person has been sad, and that the buoyant among us have by far the best chances of keeping afloat those who remain emotionally at sea. The spoiling argument is a wholly paradoxical plea for love that leaves one party ever further from the tenderness and shared insight they crave. Knowing to spot the phenomenon should lead us, when we're the ones baking or whistling a tune, to remember that the person attempting to ruin our mood isn't perhaps just a monster, though they are a bit of that too. They are childishly but sincerely worried that our happiness may come at their expense, and they are, through their remorseless negativity, in a garbled and maddening way, begging us for reassurance.
If you liked this film, download our app where you can view all.
Okay. All right, so what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to reflect on what you just watched, and you can see, that you're talking about insecurity. What stands out to you? What resonated with you? What insight have you developed? And I'd like you to share that into the chat, and then I'll have Dr. Gerkin read out some examples. Maybe it's not about the video. Maybe something else stood out to you throughout this presentation, and you can share that as well. Any insight, something that resonated with you, or maybe you developed some awareness about, never thought about it in that way. Any aha moments? Anything that resonated with you so far that you'd like to share?
One person wrote codependency issue.
Okay, that's coming up.
Someone wrote, it's interesting that we presume people can only accept us or help us if they feel the way we do.
Very insightful. I like that.
Another student wrote, being indecisive as heck.
Being indecisive?
Yeah. And another said, what stood out to me is that the root of this behavior is caused by the need for reassurance.
Oh, absolutely. We're always, it's never about who swept last or who didn't, you know, unload the dishwasher. It's always some deeper need that's not being met. And it's a security need. Any others?
Several other people agreed with the first comment about codependency. It seems like codependent relationships, I guess they're saying. Good example to be connected.
I wonder what that means.
What codependency means in this context?
Well, I know, yeah, what they mean by, I wonder what their definition of codependency means.
They may want to write a little more on that. Someone wrote, the opposition may be fearful that our downfall will be at their expense. Perhaps that's why our relationship is strained. We have an unseen fear of communicating on a personal level.
Yeah, really insightful. We're going to cover that wall that sometimes we put up a mask because we don't want to be vulnerable with others, because we want to protect ourselves from being seen so that we won't get hurt. And so we develop all of these patterns, these relationship patterns, communication patterns, and that's what we're going to do next. We're going to look at that because we need to understand it all starts with self-awareness. We need to know how we're engaging in our relationships. How did we develop that so that we can change? We can't change unless we have a good understanding of how we develop our relationship patterns, and more specifically, let's see if I can get at our boundaries. Okay, you guys have probably heard that word before. Yeah.
Excuse me, I do see that one person defined codependency as the need to please others more than themselves.
Okay, good. Yeah, and that can be a pattern of communication where we're pleasing others, where we put others' needs before our own. And that is also a strategy. That's a way of becoming secure, right? Because we are deficient in our security needs, that we will kind of roll over so that we will be accepted. And that's another pattern that we need to be aware of, because that's not a healthy choice either. So I have boundary systems here. The definition, they're invisible, they're symbolic force fields, if you will, that have three purposes: to keep people from coming into our space and abusing us, so there's a boundary, okay? And to also keep us from going into someone else's space and abusing them. And it also gives us a sense of who we are. So where I end and the other person begins, and that includes responsibility. And boundaries can be violated in three ways. They can be violated verbal boundaries, right? We can be really nasty in how we violate someone's boundary verbally with violent communication. And then we have our physical boundary, the bubble. I like to think of my bubble as arm's length apart. If you come a little bit closer without me inviting you or saying yes, then you're violating my boundary. And it can also be a sexual boundary. It's non-consensual, and we can be violated in that way, being touched when we didn't ask to be, okay, or gave permission. Okay, so if you guys can also, again, just trying to make this a little bit more engaging and not so lectury, how do you think boundary systems are developed? How did I develop my boundaries? Where did you develop those systems? Go ahead and just write it in the chat. Any good ones?
Someone wrote that their parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Parents, right. So important significant people in our lives.
Another one said through experiences.
Experience, yes, good. From others, good. So how significant adults responded to us, right? How did they model those boundaries? How did they treat our boundaries? Did they violate our boundaries? Did they say nasty things to us? Did they violate a physical boundary? What they said to us, right? So that's also, they modeled the communication pattern. And also by observing. So watching the interaction of those important adults in our lives, our parents, or maybe you had grandparents that raised you. But again, the focus is on the significant adults in your life. What did you see? Okay. And as small children, we have no boundaries, right? So if you can just think about a child that maybe you've raised children, or maybe you have a little cousin or something like that. They don't have boundaries. We have to teach them. We have to show them what boundaries are. Like, no, don't touch that, don't say that, do this, etc., and so on. And people who have grown up in dysfunctional homes can suffer various kinds of boundary impairments, which is what we're going to look at next. So there are typically, and this can be nuanced, but there are typically 4 types of boundaries systems. So there's an intact boundary. This is the goal, where we accept, and this is, for those of you who are mentioning codependency, this is key here. We accept responsibility for our own thoughts, our own emotions, and our own behaviors, okay? And we don't accept the responsibility of the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors of others. It's not our responsibility what other people think about us and what they do and how they feel. That's not. We are responsible for how we attach meaning, to their behavior and what they say to us, but we're not responsible for their thoughts, their emotions, their behaviors. That's an intact boundary. Likely a person who has an intact boundary, they've been modeled in intact boundaries from their significant adults in their lives. Then there's no boundary. Okay, these people have no sense of when they're being abused or when they're abusing others. Okay, so this can be a blatant perpetrator where they just, hey, I can violate your physical boundary. I can do whatever I want. They don't recognize boundaries. Same thing when we're the ones that are being abused. Sometimes we grow up in such dysfunctional or chronically, traumatic environments that, hey, if someone calls me a bad name, I don't even notice it. It's normal. What boundaries? Okay, it's just normal to us to be hurt. And then the next one is the damaged boundary. So this is more of like a mix of intact and no boundary and wall for boundary. So in some relationships, we are able to set limits and say no and not take responsibility for someone's feelings and take care of ourselves. And other times with certain people, and this may be true for some of us, we cannot protect ourselves, or we're disrespectful to them. We're not respecting their boundaries, or we let them violate our boundaries. And then maybe in a professional relationship, you would never let that happen. But in this particular, maybe it's a parental relationship where you're just like, man, my mom she loves to let me have it. Okay, and you just take it and take it and take it. So that's a damaged boundary. I'm kind of, I just say it's a mixed bag. And then walls for boundaries. So people also develop walls, which I think someone also mentioned earlier, to protect themselves. I think of this as like the porcupine, where it's like, I've been hurt so much that I have either an angry wall where I constantly am giving off this angry energy of fear, or like a retreat, like, okay, no, it's okay. Or maybe even that, like, the pleasing aspect that you guys described earlier, not being able to be your authentic self, being vulnerable, can't be intimate with others. We're lacking in the need for intimacy because how can I trust anybody? I've been hurt so much. I have to have this wall to protect me. I cannot even let the good people in. Okay, so reflect on this for a moment. And thinking about that relationship and your personal professional life where you wrote about in your interactions that are less ideal, what type of boundary system do you have with this person? Just reflect on that for a moment. I'm allowing you guys just to kind of metabolize this a little bit, let it kind of run its course through your system after hearing it. And what types of boundaries do you have? I mean, sometimes even just hearing that intact boundaries for some folks can be really like shocking, because you're so used to having that codependent relationship with others that you're like, wait, I'm not responsible for how that person is acting or feeling or believing. And yeah, no, you're not. All right, so moving on here. Now we're going to talk about the specific actions that you can take to enhance the relationship quality. Okay, so not only do we have the boundary system that we've developed over time, boundary patterns, we also have communication patterns. And so we're going to look at that because that's just foundational. A lot of our conditioning growing up is that we learned whenever there's a difference or a conflict, as a child, we learn that the person with more power is going to win. Think about that. Think about that in your own childhood. The person with more power is going to win. So one person is going to get what they want. I'm thinking about my own family system. I'm number 3 or 4. And someone's going to get the short end of the stick. And we all know we don't want to be the one on the side. We know what side we want to be on, right? We want to have the power. And so we learn how to manipulate, how to dominate a situation. You know, I'm just gonna, this is totally off script. And for some of my colleagues that are on here, I have to share this. We played basketball, myself, our department chair, and my best buddy, Dodrell, who's on here. Hello. And every Tuesday we'd play basketball for like a semester. And while we were playing basketball, I realized, or they actually, my colleagues had to tell me that I was violating their boundaries because I was like, man, I wanted to win. Okay, it doesn't matter if I break or throw out, you know, my chair's knees. Okay, like I wanted to win, and I developed that pattern in my family system because I was in between brothers. And I was trying to dominate. I wanted to win so bad. And so it wasn't even until, gosh, I'm 41 now. So when was that? I was probably like 40 when I had the aha moment, like, okay, Mia, this is for fun. Like, you don't need to kill anybody right now while you're playing basketball with your friends at work. So those are kind of the insights that we need to develop, how we grew up in our family system. And how are we acting like that now in our daily lives, in our relationships as adults? Because the past is present, believe it or not, it is. And so awareness is really key there. So communicating responsibly, we pretty much communicate all day long, okay? Even all day long, all day, every day of our life, even when we're alone, if we're not texting somebody, if we're not on social media, there's an inner dialogue, right? And how we communicate determines the success and the health and the quality of our relationships. We get a whole lot of training in communication, but it's just unconscious, okay? And it's often unhealthy habits of communication, okay? And we are also socialized to point everything out in a person that's wrong with them. Again, because it's that dominance. Like I want to get what I want, even in my adult relationship with my husband. Okay, my little younger Mia comes in and is like, you know what? Someone's gonna get the shorter stick here, right? And I don't want it to be me, so I'm gonna try and manipulate the situation to get what I want, right? Do we really get what we want that way? We don't. Maybe in the short term, but the quality of the relationship suffers when we are not coming from, our intention is not there, Okay, so the foundation begins with being present, which I have here. Being mindful. Mindfulness is, gosh, the key to everything these days. It means be here now, okay? Put your phone away, turn off social media, turn off the television, be here with that person. During conflict, right, of course, we are also socialized to be there with the people we care about during the rough patches, right? You guys know that. So if someone's going through a hard time, everybody's going to band together, like, oh, we want to show that we care about that person. And that's great. That's wonderful. But we also want to be there, and we want to be present during the good times. We want to put the phone away. Okay. We want to make eye contact, be in the moment. In this webinar right here with us right now, being present. You're not, hopefully not writing notes on another class or completing an assignment. You're here with us, be present, okay? And that you do through really the 5 senses, just, you know, using your sight, smell, touch, hearing, listening to the other person, just be present with them. And sharing, again, going back to the good times, we want to, what are the things when you read about high quality relationships in positive psychology? One of the key things that has kind of emerged from the literature is that people with high quality relationships are present and mindful during the good times, right? So they, when I come home, or even today, and I run out there to my husband, I'm like, I'm done with the webinar, and this is what happened, and David played a song, and Dodder was there, and Dr. Bryce Sachs, et cetera, so on. I want to share my good news. My husband's like, wait a minute, I'm, you know, he's rolling through his phone. That's not a high quality way to respond to somebody. So we want to be there when times are hard and we're in conflict, but we also want to be there when they're good, because again, that's part of intimacy with somebody is the fun and fullness, which is my favorite. Okay. And then the next here is to be intentional. And this is probably the most important part of this training, or any communication training. It's the single most important ingredient to dialogue, because most social scientists, about 75% or even more, will say that your nonverbals and voice, facial expression, your gut sense, you know, our nerves will pick up and feel information. So it's not about what we say, it's about where are we coming from, okay? Our intention is what actually animates our body, you know, our facial features, our, you know, our tone of voice. And when our verbal cues don't match our words, who do you think we're going to trust? We're going to trust the words or the nonverbals, the intention, okay? We tend to trust the body and the gesture. So you can say something in like the most perfect, awesome, beautiful way, but if your attention is off and you are trying to pull one over on them or manipulate them or get ahead, and they're going to feel it. They're going to feel your intention. So the intention is so powerful. Actually, if we do nothing else and just cultivate a more sincere, genuine intention to understand the person and create an experience of mutual respect and understanding, that's going to change the whole trajectory of the relationship, dialogue in the relationship. And we want to be mindful of what is my intent, what do I truly want here, okay? Am I after, like, is my goal in this relationship, in this dialogue that we're having, just to get what I want? Okay. Are you really going to get what you want that way? That, like I said earlier, that does work to an extent, but it's going to, you know, decrease the quality of the relationship. It's just about you. So even in the workplace, for example, if my intention is to get what I want, then everyone in my social network becomes an object. Okay. And that is a very lonely place to live in. If my intention becomes to understand and participate in the flow and give of a relationship, then that's that's where the secret sauce is. That's what we want in our lives. All right, so that's the intention. So again, just we need to check ourselves. What is our intention in this relationship? What is my intention in this conversation that we're having? And remember, oops, one of my earpods just dropped off. Just a second. Okay, I'm back. All right. So the next one I have here, technical difficulties, is my personal favorite, which is to implement the do-over. David, did you guys do the do-over as kids when you were playing in the neighborhood?
All the time. Do-overs, do-overs.
Yeah, exactly. So again, you guys know this now, I like to play basketball. So when we were playing basketball and there was some disagreement where we couldn't, you know, we couldn't determine who's right, who's wrong, then someone would just yell out, do over, right? And then we would just start over again. And that's the same in relationships. It's almost never too late to call out a do-over. And sometimes it's within the process. So mindfulness kicks in and we can just own it. Wait a minute, hold on. My intention was not, you know, my intention is not coming from the right place here. My intention was really to work together. And do-overs are so important. It gives us an opportunity to deepen a relationship. Okay, so that's where the intimacy is. It's tragic when so many times people are cut off from conflict. You guys probably reflect on your own life where you just, I'm just not going to deal with it. I'm going to go put the wall boundary up, right? Because when we do that, we're avoiding what could potentially be intimacy. Because we learn from each other through our differences. And we miss the most important, most valuable opportunity, which is the chance to learn how to make peace. Nobody can have a perfect relationship. That does not exist, okay? What is most important is knowing how to repair a relationship and to keep doing it. My husband and I are gonna do that probably sometime today. Yesterday I was sharing with Dr. Gerkin earlier, I had to repair with my son. My intention was off. You know, I was showing him a part of me that was really scared because of his safety and because I love him. And instead I showed him my angry part. And so I had to back up and really explain to him, hey, what happened is actually I'm worried. I was worried that you were going to get hurt. And that's why I got angry. It's because I love you so much. So every time we blow someone off or we have that wall, we miss the opportunity to learn how to stop being at war within ourselves, with other people, and then extending that out to the greater society. Moving on to active listening to understand. Listening tends to, you know, we think that we're really good at it, but we're typically not. It's a skill, it takes practice. And you know what? This is a good time for me to mention that all of these strategies that I'm giving you here come across as pretty easy, you know, that easy to comprehend, easy to understand. But when it comes to practicing it and putting it in, you know, into your life, integrating it into your social networks, that's more challenging. And so that can use a little bit more coaching or more self-awareness. And so you have counselors at GCC, and we're here to help you with those types of things. We're not clinical, but we can help with skills, just like understanding the intention and how to overcome sort of those communication obstacles, et cetera, and so on. So active listening, one of my favorite quotes on active listening for me to just to help understand what it's like good listeners are like trampolines. Okay, so it just, when someone, because our egos tend to get in the way, right? So somebody has something they want to disclose to us, we want to be trampolines. Okay, I gotcha, right? Let's just let it bounce off of you. Be curious. Don't be defensive. Be curious, because it goes all back to the hierarchy of needs. what insecurity, what need, what is not being met for them, what need is not being met for me, and how can we find the happy middle there? Because like I said, we don't want to force anything on anyone. We don't want to manipulate, right? Because then we don't get what we really want, which is that high quality connection with that other person where it's mutual respect. Okay. And we want to give them, we want to ask constructive questions to clarify what they're saying. Again, check the intention, because if the intention is not there to resolve and to understand and repair, then everything is going to go off the rails. And we want to make sure that we give them the space to openly discuss their thoughts and ideas. All right. Finally, we're going to get to practice empathy for unmet needs. And I've already alluded to this, but we want to make sure that we keep in mind Maslow's hierarchy of needs, SBK, more modern version, because all of our actions and behaviors, ours and the other person's, are an attempt to meet some deeper need that are universal. That's the humanity. That's the, the humanistic psychology. It's like we all have these needs. And so we want to practice empathy. So when we're in those conflicts with others and we want to see the humanity in them. What is it? A physiological? Is it a safety need? What's happening here for them? Where are they insecure? And where am I insecure? Kind of remembering that video that I showed you. Maybe this person just really wants some consideration or to be included or to have a little bit more trust. Okay. So take a moment and reflect on these. And I want you to commit to, I want you to write this down. I want you to commit to a specific one of these actions that you can take. You can, the person that you wrote down, or maybe you want to practice with someone else, because this takes practice. This is skill, just like any skill, just like playing basketball. You got to do one layup after another for, to fire those neural networks, those pathways in the brain, so that it becomes more natural, because we've wired those communication patterns, those boundary patterns for so long that it's going to take a lot of practice to rewire the way we communicate, rewire how we're in relationships. So go ahead and write that down.
Do you want these written on paper or in the chat, Mia?
No, just, what time is it? Let them reflect on it, and then we can have them write it in the chat. Just a couple examples.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and hear some examples. What are you guys committed to doing and changing?
First one that came in says, be intentional.
Beautiful. Thank you, whoever shared that.
Next one says, implement the do-over.
Yeah, do-over.
And another person said, I love the do-over for my kids.
Yeah. Oh, they saved me, because sometimes I'm the one that has a boundary issue with them. So I have to apologize. I need to model that, because they're learning their boundaries from me and my husband. So I need to show them that I respect them. Because if I don't show them that I respect them, guess what? They're going to grow up and they're going to be in a relationship where that person doesn't respect them, and that's going to be normal. So they need to develop that sense of, what am I responsible for here? Are you violating one of my boundaries? And do I violate my kids' boundaries? Heck yeah, I do. Sometimes I say things that I don't mean, that hurt them, and we know that verbal boundary violations are way more hurtful. Well, can be, not always. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so extreme there, but like a lot of times, the verbal emotional boundary rupture can be more painful than a physical, and longer lasting.
A few more responses, Mia. Having the do-over with self-love.
It starts with the self, right? It starts with the inner dialogue. Starts with your root. Exactly. Very good. Beautiful.
A couple of people chose active listening to understand. Several people.
Where are we off here? What need is not being met for this person? Good. Awesome. Okay. So I wanted to end with this. We're not ending. Hey, we're not ending, people. Don't leave.
Can I jump in here, Mia?
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to be adding the PDF file to the slides for the presentation into the chat, so you can download it before you leave. So if you're waiting for that, just be a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and we also need your info, and you're going to want the resources too. All right, so I have the Harvard longevity study up here. This is a study that's been going on for 80 years. And what they found in this study is that relationships are by far the most important determinant for our overall quality of life, and people live longer when we have high quality connections and relationships with others. I'm sharing, this is an image of my parents at the Grand Canyon, and they're just too cute. And so I had to share. And that's where I learned my boundaries and my relationship patterns that, I owe to them. Okay. All right. So what I'd like you to do next is you're going to choose one of these. You're going to choose affirm, appreciate, or appraise. So write in the chat something that you've learned today or something that resonated with you. You're going to appreciate something you heard or experienced that was helpful or you enjoyed. And finally, you're going to appraise something you wish you learned, like maybe, hey, Mia, you could have gone deeper into this. It wasn't clear on that. Like I wish I had more clarity that you learned in this webinar, or something you want to learn more about. So affirm, appreciate, or praise, and then we'll have Dr. Gerkin share.
The first one says, I appreciate that you highlighted the difference between belonging and intimacy.
Thank you. It's an important distinction.
Another one, I appreciate your sharing your personal experiences.
Oh, good.
I learned the meaning of codependency. I appraise that when we make assumptions, all goes south in relationships.
Can you read that one again? I'm sorry.
I appraise that when we make assumptions, all goes south in relationships.
Yeah.
Hierarchy of needs was helpful because I learned about it in classes and you went into depth.
Oh, awesome. And just remember, Maslow never intended to have a pyramid. Isn't that fascinating? That was actually a business consultant group. They took his theory and they made it into the pyramid, and then everyone just started using it. But he never intended it to be in a step lock process. It's supposed to be integrated into the person to be able to self-actualize. And self-actualization looks like, when someone can, I'll use myself, this presentation, for example. If I didn't have my lower needs met, like if I didn't have somewhere to sleep last night and I don't have any food, or maybe I'm living in a home that's with violence, I won't be able to self-actualize this presentation the way that I did today. So I could still pull it off, but it wouldn't be, the optimum capacity of my purpose.
Okay, Mia, there are several other really good, really great appraisals and appreciations and so forth, but to have time for questions and wrap up on time.
Okay,
You better
sounds
move on,
good.
but
So
you
we'll
can-
save the chat, and
Yeah.
that way I can see them later, and also, you know, ways that I can improve. That would be good. Okay, so here we're ready for questions. As you're typing those in the chat, I will cover that you can contact me at GCC. As I mentioned, I'm counseling faculty, so is Dr. Gerkin. If you want to learn more, okay, you can take a CPD 150 College Success course. We're always working towards self-actualization in CPD 150. It's all about how can you constantly grow and change and improve and become the best version who you are so that you can, you know, achieve your goals and dreams. Take a behavioral health science course, BHS. A lot of people don't know about BHS, but much of what I covered today is also covered in BHS, or a psychology course. We have psychology courses. I know that we also have a positive psychology course. And then if you want to schedule an individual appointment, you can always, I have the email down here, just send an email to our front office and you can schedule an appointment with one of our wonderful counselors. We're not clinical, we're not doing therapy, but we are, you know, if you have an issue and you need us to kind of figure that out, work together, problem solve, you know, like I said, if you wanted to develop further the skill of communication and developing, you know, awareness, or I mean, anything with regards to personal or professional development, you can see a counselor. And then we also have some upcoming workshops. Again, this is all going to be in the chat, so don't feel like you have to write it down. But we have remote test taking and test anxiety from my colleague, Amy Turgeson. And then from James Wilson, we have healthcare literacy, COVID-19 contact testing. And so I'm available if you guys have questions. We still have like 3 minutes.
Okay, here's a question, Mia. Do some of these concepts and boundaries shift when relating to children?
No, I don't think so. I think we all come in with the same needs. So unless that person can clarify what they're asking, my answer to that would be we all have these needs, and we need to model the appropriate boundaries to children and teach them how to have healthy boundaries and how to have healthy relationships and how to communicate in a healthy, productive way. So it's the same. I mean, I think we need to do a better job at teaching them healthy boundaries, so that, you know, they don't have the ruptured boundary systems that some of us do growing up, and then we have to go back and figure out how do we correct those in our current relationships, because like I said, the past is present. The way that we've been doing things for so long, we continue to do until we develop self-awareness, and then we can change. I hope that answered the question.
Here's some clarification. Just thinking about how children don't have the same boundaries set in yet. And for example, I am certainly responsible for the child's emotions when they're young.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, yeah. Well, we really can't control how someone feels, you know, but we have control over how we treat them and how we model. So it's always what they see us doing, so what they're observing, how we respond to them, and what we say to them. That's going to help them develop those intact boundary systems. What do you think, Dr. Gerkin?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, do you think I'm answering that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Our time is about up. I wanted to mention that I did post the slides in the chat. And if any of you are here for extra credit from a class, when you type in chat, we'll see your name, but please put your instructor's name, the class or the program that you're from that is giving you extra credit, so we can notify your instructors before you go.
And I wanted to share, thank you, David. Also, I forgot to put the slide up, but these are my resources. So we're excited throughout this entire webinar SBK, I've read his book 3 times. Like I said, I've taken his course. And this, I couldn't recommend this. I mean, this is just an amazing book. And then this, Oren J. Soper, he wrote A Mindful Approach to Nonviolent Communication. I just think that's such a great title because, you know, our communication can be really violent. And that's an excellent book. And then, of course, Dr. Siegel on mindset. So that's, you know, kind of talking about the inner workings of the brain. That's really helpful for personal transformation. Any other questions? We made it 3:16, so I'm only 1 minute over. I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, and we're getting the extra credit information in the chat. So
Okay.
I'm going to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you mind stop recording so that I can play the final song?
Exactly, I was just going to say that. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Just a second.